weed of the week is wild buckwheat.
Another one of those viney type weeds, Brian. And when we think about the viney type weeds, typically HPPDs are not our favorite choice. So we didn't pick the weed of the week just because the HPPDs are not going to be our lead products on it. But it is something to keep in mind. Whenever you've got a vine, typically we like to look at something different.
Yeah, we do. And keep in mind too that with wild buckwheat, it is just an annual. It's not a perennial or anything. It doesn't have a big rhizome or an enormous root, but it can be a real problem, and we have seen it spreading around the country, in part because Roundup is weak on it naturally. It's not necessarily resistant, it's just Roundup has never done a good job controlling this particular weed. And then we are seeing, HPPDs that are super common, not real great on it. So when you've got a bunch of chemistry out there commonly used that isn't effective on a weed, well, what happens with that weed? It spreads just that much more.
Well, and most of the pre's aren't doing a good job on wild buckwheat. The exception, I would say, has been Pursuit. When you've got a pre that's got some Pursuit in there, it seems to do pretty good on wild buckwheat. But most of the pre's that we're using in corn, for example, really don't hit wild buckwheat very well. So all of a sudden, if you're putting a lot of your weight of your program into the pre, well, you better be timely on that post-app. And what's happening, we're getting so many more broadleaf killers in their pre, and rightly so, because we've got a lot of small-seeded broadleaves out there, that by the time we're out spraying the wild buckwheat, it's had time to vine out, and it's more difficult to get.
Yep, that's absolutely the key, is you've got to get to it early. Suppress it with the pre-emerge herbicide, but then come with your product early post. So when I start talking early post, I'm right away thinking dicamba in corn, dicamba on Xtend soybeans. If I do those things, I'm probably going to wipe out my buckwheat.
Well, in soybeans, you've got some different options, and I mentioned Pursuit or Raptor before, and Pursuit is in a lot of these pre-mixes that we're using pre, and we haven't used it. It's been too expensive. There are some limits on rotation, that kind of thing, but guess what? Pursuit's another one of those products, just like the HPPDs, that have really come down in price.
Yep, so a half rate's probably $3. So you can throw that out there. That's absolutely going to help. But anyway, I want to go back to the to the post-emerge products. So early post, I'm thinking a lot about dicamba. Later post, then I'm looking at Buctril in corn. That's probably my preferred product. Otherwise, if I'm thinking soybeans, yeah, I would probably lean toward Pursuit if I didn't use that pre-emerge, but otherwise you've got Liberty and Liberty Link soybeans.
We probably field more calls about wild buckwheat in wheat growing areas than we do in other areas, and that's fortunate because it's easier to control in wheat. We could start off with something like Sharpen Down, come back post-emerge. Many of the products that you're going to use post-emerge have some level of Buctril in them, like the old Bronate, for example. My favorite choice of a premix that has that bromoxynil in it is Husky. Husky does a nice job. Even though it's got an HPPD in there, you've got a pretty good strong rate of Buctril in there too.
Hey, when you mentioned wheat, that just got me thinking about some of the burn down situations like post-harvest, that type of thing. Make sure you've got some 2,4-D or dicamba in there, not just Roundup.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's Weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.